My name is Lucinda. I'm 27 years old. I have a job, my own apartment, my own life, and I'm not at all the girl my parents still sometimes see in my eyes. I work as a data analyst for an insurance company, and frankly, I earn well enough for my age to pay for my own place and indulge in the occasional indulgence, a trip to a new restaurant, a concert by my favorite band, a short weekend trip. Most people in my shoes would probably say, "You've already achieved everything." But beneath these external achievements, there's a part of my life that gnaws at me from the inside, robbing me of joy and peace. My parents live only half an hour away, and although they are kind, decent people whom I truly love, sometimes I feel like they stubbornly continue to treat me as if I'm 15, as if I'm a teenager who needs reminding and guidance. I visit them quite often. After all, family is family, and I couldn't refuse to see them, but to say that these visits bring me peace would be a lie. As if that weren't enough, I have an older sister, Maria. She's 33. And she has two wonderful but incredibly loud and energetic children, 8-year-old Tommy and 6-year-old Sophia. Maria has been married to Rick for almost 10 years, and from the outside, everything seems smooth and happy for them, but it was the two of them who caused the chaos that has now settled in my life. For the past few months, every Saturday, without warning, without calling, and without the slightest attempt to find out if I'm free, Maria shows up on my doorstep at precisely 9 in the morning. She stands on the landing with a wide, beaming smile, holding the children's hands tightly, and with that light, almost carefree intonation says, "Hi, Lucy. The kids are so excited to spend the day with their favorite aunt." And the next moment, she kisses Tommy and Sophia on the cheeks, promises to be back that evening, somewhere around 8 or 9, and disappears through the door, leaving me alone with two endless fountains of energy, whose shouts, laughter, and arguments turn my Saturdays into 12-hour marathons. Meanwhile, she and Rick head off to restaurants, movies, shopping malls, or somewhere else, indulging in the kind of rest I've long dreamed of. I held on as best I could, but 3 months ago, after a particularly exhausting day, when I went to bed with a headache and woke up on Sunday feeling groggy, I decided this couldn't go on. I sat in the kitchen with a cup of cold coffee, which I still hadn't finished, and plucked up the courage to call Maria. I tried to speak softly, almost apologetically, though inside I was seething. "Hey Maria, let's talk about Saturday. I love spending time with the kids, but maybe we could work out a schedule so I have some weekends to myself too," I asked, trying to sound calm. There was silence, thick, tense, so intense that I even thought the connection had been severed. But then I heard her voice, cold, hurt, as if I'd betrayed something sacred. "Lucinda, I can't believe you're so selfish. This is what family does for each other. Rick and I work so much we barely have time alone, and you're complaining." There was a hint of condemnation in her words, and then she added, "You don't have children, you don't have a husband. So what do you even do on Saturdays?" I tried to explain to her that I had a right to life too, that I might want to meet up with friends, go on a date, or just be alone and recharge after a tough week. But Maria seemed not to hear me, dismissing me as if I were a child's whim. "You're being ridiculous. Tommy and Sophia adore you. You're practically their second mother," she said, and her voice was so certain that my stomach sank. A few weeks passed, and I realized that talking to her directly was useless. So I decided to take a different approach, talk to my parents. One Sunday, when we were gathered for dinner at their house, I took advantage of the moment as we sat around the table discussing the usual trivialities. I took a deep breath and turned to my mother. "Mom, I wanted to talk to you about something. I love Tommy and Sophia, but I'm getting a little tired of spending every Saturday with them. I was thinking, maybe Maria and I could agree on some kind of schedule to make things easier for everyone." I said this quietly but firmly, hoping that my parents would help me get my point across to my sister. My father barely took his eyes off his plate, as if he was afraid that if he looked at me, he would see too much pain, and he quietly cleared his throat and said, "Lucinda, these children are family, and you need to help family." His voice sounded tired, emotionless, but it still left a bad taste in my mouth. because it was from him that I always looked most for understanding. But it was my mother who hurt me the most, because she put down her fork, looked straight at me with her tired eyes, reflecting disappointment, and said, "Darling, you were raised better than that. Maria works hard and deserves to spend time with her husband. You're single. You don't have the same responsibilities as she does. And frankly, caring for Tommy and Sophia is the best preparation anyone could ask for. When you have a husband and children of your own, you'll be grateful for this whole experience." I felt my stomach clench, and trying not to lose it, I whispered, "But Mom, what if I want to date someone? What if I want to go out with friends on Saturday? I feel like I'll never get a break." But before Mom could say anything, Maria intervened. She leaned back in her chair, her face completely superior, and said in a calm but firm tone, "You can date on Fridays or Sundays, and your friends can spend time with you and the kids. It's not that hard, Lucinda." And at that moment, my father nodded, as if confirming her words, and added, "Your sister is right. Family always comes first." I felt a lump rise in my throat, and I wanted to scream, to release all the pent-up irritation. But instead, I just forced a tight smile and said, "Yes, I understand," even though everything inside me screamed, "No, I don't understand, and I will never agree with this." I sat there, feeling like an outsider among those closest to me, as if they saw me not as a woman with her own dreams and plans, but as an unpaid nanny, denied the right to a private life simply because she was unmarried and childless. I began to get angry at everyone at once, at my parents for siding with Maria without even trying to hear me, at Maria herself for so blatantly using me, and worst of all, even at the children, because their noise and endless demands began to evoke in me not love, but helplessness. A few weeks passed, and 3 weeks before Christmas, I was sitting in the office buried in spreadsheets and trying to focus on a data analysis project when the phone rang. Mom appeared on the screen, and trying to sound cheerful, I answered, "Mom, hi." Her usual gentle "dear" came back, and then she got down to business. "I'm calling about Christmas. We're having a big celebration this year. Your Aunt Linda is coming with her 3 kids. Uncle Mike and Aunt Sarah are coming with 2 kids. And of course, Rick's parents and his brother's family. That's 4 more kids." I automatically started counting in my head, and the number was impressive. It was going to be quite a crowd. I sighed and asked, "Sounds good, Mom. What should I bring?" But Mom seemed to have been expecting the question, and her voice sounded almost apologetic. "Actually, that's exactly why I'm calling. I don't think I can cook for that many people on my own. I was hoping you could order food from a restaurant, a good caterer, so there would be enough for everyone." I felt my heart clench painfully, knowing full well that feeding that many guests would be expensive, but I still clarified, "How many people are we talking about?" "Only about 25, Mom replied, and after a short pause, she added, "I know it's asking a lot, but you're doing such a good job, and the rest of us are going through a tough time right now." I clutched the phone tighter than necessary, and deep down I felt the urge to say no, to say it all at once, that just because I had a good job didn't mean I should have to pay for everyone else's Christmas dinner. But the words stuck in my throat, because I could hear the tension and weariness in her voice, and because it was Christmas, a time when refusals sound especially cruel. So I swallowed and said, "Okay, Mom, I'll handle the catering." She sighed happily into the phone. "Oh, thank you so much, darling. You're such a good daughter. I'll send you a list of everyone's favorite dishes." When the call ended, I set the phone down on the table and sat motionless for a few seconds, feeling irritation and sadness wash over me. $2,000. That's how much the Christmas dinner would cost, even though I wouldn't have any part in planning or preparing it. But I forced myself to suppress these thoughts, reminding myself it was just a one-time thing, and it would make everyone happy. I called Romano's, placed my order, and paid a deposit of $1,200, trying not to think about the final amount. Work kept me busy, Projects came and went, and frankly, that's what saved me from constantly thinking about my family and their expectations. Deep down, I even caught myself looking forward to Christmas, because despite all the misunderstandings, a big family gathering always brought with it warmth, noise, the smell of food, and a festive feeling that couldn't be replaced. I thought about my parents' house filling with voices, laughter, and the scent of pine needles, and I tried to focus on these pleasant images rather than on how much it would cost me. Then, exactly a week before Christmas, as I was sitting in the office finishing a data analysis report, the phone rang. I glanced at the screen and saw an unfamiliar number, but when I answered, a female voice said, "Ms. Martinez, this is Sarah from Romano's restaurant. I'm calling about your catering order for Christmas Eve." I sat up straight in my chair, smoothed my hair, and replied, "Hi, Sarah. How are you?" Her voice laced with apologetic apology. "I'm so sorry, but we've had a problem with one of your dishes. Our supplier had a problem with the honey-glazed ham, and we're unable to supply it. We can offer a roast turkey as a substitute for the same price. Would that be okay?" I felt a hint of disappointment. Ham had always been the symbol of the holiday table for me, but I tried to conceal it and maintain a positive attitude. Let me discuss this with my family. Can I call you back?" Sarah responded with relief. "Of course. Just let us know as soon as possible so we can work this out." After hanging up, I immediately dialed my mom's number, but it went to voicemail. I tried my dad's. Same story. In desperation, I pressed Maria, and again heard only a short beep and an automated answer. It was as if they had all simultaneously turned off their phones just when I urgently needed to talk to them. I decided not to waste time and stopped by my parents' house after work. Someone was bound to be home. By 6:15, I had already pulled up to their house, retrieved my key, and let myself in, as I always did. The house was warm, and the rich aroma of my mother's cooking, perhaps stew or some kind of gravy, wafted through the air. The smell was so familiar that I smiled for a moment. I was about to call my mother when I heard her voice from the living room. She was talking on the house phone, and her voice sounded loud and excited, with those intonations I knew by heart. I was about to go in, but suddenly I distinctly heard my name and froze. "Oh, Linda, don't worry. Lucinda will be perfect for babysitting. No need to come up with any entertainment for them," Mom said with a light laugh. I froze in the hallway, my heart pounding, unsure what exactly she meant. But then her words hit me like a slap. "We're going to set up a bedroom upstairs with movies and games, and Lucinda can stay there with all 9 kids while we adults enjoy Christmas downstairs." 9 kids. 9. My heart pounded so hard I pressed myself against the wall, afraid they'd overhear me, but unable to leave. I know, Mom continued laughing. "She's absolutely perfect for this. Lucinda doesn't have kids of her own, so she's not as exhausted by them as the rest of us parents. And besides, she's the youngest in the family. She's full of energy." At that moment, my legs gave way beneath me, and I felt a wave of nausea rising in my throat. They'd planned all this without even telling me. I heard my mother add with a hint of joy, "Trust me, Linda, bring all your grandchildren." Lucinda loves babysitting Tommy and Sophia every Saturday, so having a few more kids in one day won't be a problem. That way, all the adults can finally relax and enjoy their time instead of chasing after the kids. Linda must have said something funny because Mom burst out laughing and concluded, "Exactly. We'll just leave all 9 kids upstairs with Lucinda and have a proper grown-up Christmas. Good wine, heartfelt conversation, maybe some card games. It'll be wonderful." I backed toward the front door as quietly as I could, my hands shaking as if I'd just witnessed something forbidden, my whole body trying to push the horror out. I couldn't believe my ears. This whole Christmas story I'd imagined as an opportunity to feel at least a little family warmth, again had turned out to be a carefully orchestrated trap. They expected me not only to pay nearly $2,000 for the food, but also to spend the entire holiday cooped upstairs, looking after 9 children while all the other adults were downstairs enjoying wine, conversation, and a sense of celebration that I had no role in other than being an unpaid servant. I heard my mother finish the call, say goodbye, and hang up, and only then did I dare to make a sound as if I'd just walked in. I opened and closed the front door and called, "Mom, I'm here," trying to speak evenly, even though my voice was shaking. She appeared in the hallway immediately, a smile so wide and artificial that my stomach sank. "Oh, Lucinda, dear. What a pleasant surprise. What brings you here this evening?" I clenched my teeth to keep from screaming and answered calmly, "The restaurant called about the Christmas catering. They can't do honey-glazed ham anymore. They're offering roast turkey instead. Is that okay with everyone?" Mom nodded excitedly. "Oh, that sounds perfect. Turkey for Christmas is wonderful. Whatever you think, dear." I nodded and hurried away, feeling like if I lingered another minute, I'd throw up right in front of them. When I got to the car, I got behind the wheel and sat in the driveway for a few minutes, gripping it so tightly my knuckles turned white, trying to process what I'd just heard. They'd planned this whole thing behind my back. I was supposed to pay for the food, watch 9 kids, and give up my right to the party while they were downstairs having fun. And the worst part wasn't even that they did it, but that they didn't even ask me if I wanted it. They simply assumed I'd do what I always did, because I always did what they needed, when they needed it. When I returned home, I was shaking with anger. I paced the apartment in circles, feeling my anger grow stronger with each passing minute. And it wasn't just this Christmas. For years, my entire family had treated me not as an adult with my own life and rights, but as a convenient, unpaid caregiver who, moreover, earned a good living and could cover their financial needs. I remembered every Saturday when Maria showed up on my doorstep with Tommy and Sophia, how my parents repeatedly sided with her when I tried to object, how they made me feel guilty just for wanting one day off to myself. And now it had all culminated in a carefully orchestrated Christmas trap from which I was left with no escape. I felt I couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed the phone and dialed Romano's restaurant. When someone answered, I introduced myself. "Hello, this is Lucinda Martinez. I placed a large catering order for Christmas Eve." The girl confirmed, "Yes, Miss Martinez. Have you decided on the turkey substitution?" Then I took a deep breath and said, "Actually, I need to cancel the entire order." There was a long pause, and then a cautious voice asked, "Cancel everything? But Christmas is only a week away." I closed my eyes and repeated firmly, "Yes, please cancel everything." The girl tried to clarify. "We can process it, but your refund will be subject to administrative fees, and you'll get about $1,000 back. Is that okay?" I nodded, even though she couldn't see it. "Yes, please cancel the order immediately." "Okay, we'll handle it." "Your refund will be processed within 3 to 5 business days," she replied. After hanging up, I froze with the phone in my hand, feeling a strange mixture of relief and panic. I just single-handedly canceled a Christmas dinner for 25 people, and none of them knew it yet. I sat on the couch, staring at my phone, my insides churning, trying to remember something important, something that might offer a way out of this sticky web my family had so skillfully ensnared me. And then it hit me. About 3 months ago, my college friend Jessica had called me with the easy cheerfulness that had always been her trademark, inviting me to spend Christmas with her. Jessica and I had been roommates our freshman year, sharing sleepless nights before exams, experiencing our first teenage crushes, and remaining close, even though after graduation she moved to Colorado, where she found a job at a tech company and, judging by her endless social media posts, literally lost herself in the beauty of mountain hikes and ski slopes. I clearly remembered that September conversation, her light laughter on the phone, and her words, "Lucy, you should come and spend Christmas with us this year." My parents have an amazing cabin in the mountains, and we always have friends and family over there, skiing, hot chocolate by the fireplace, a festive dinner, just like in the movies. I declined almost automatically, without even thinking. "That sounds amazing, Jess, but I always spend Christmas with my family." The word always had seemed sacred, obligatory, but now, sitting in my apartment consumed by anger and resentment, I realized that this always was actually a chain that held me back. And this conversation suddenly seemed less a coincidence and more a sign, a chance to break free. I scrolled through my contacts, found Jessica's number, and despite my hands still shaking, felt a resolve I hadn't felt in a long time. "Lucinda, my God, how nice to hear from you." Her voice was as bright as ever. I swallowed and exhaled. "Hi, Jess. I know this sounds sudden, but remember you invited me to the family cabin for Christmas. Is that offer still open?" She practically screamed with joy. "Are you serious? That would be amazing. Of course it still stands. We're arriving there on December 23rd. Can you make it?" I nodded, even though she couldn't see. "I can leave the evening of the 23rd after work." "Perfect. I'll send you all the details. Lucy, I can't wait to see you." When we hung up, I felt like a huge weight had been lifted off my shoulders. For the first time in months, I felt free. And then the 23rd arrived. I deliberately left work early, packed my suitcase, threw my things in the trunk, and set off on the long drive to Colorado. I arrived at Jessica's parents' house around 8 p.m. and was met by Mike and Carol, her mom and dad. They were so welcoming that I immediately felt like part of their family. We spent the entire evening playing board games, drinking tea, and laughing as if I wasn't a guest, but one of their own. The next morning, we went to a mountain hut, and it was like a Christmas card come to life before my eyes. A cozy wooden house, snow-covered pine trees, windows glowing with soft light. On Christmas Eve, we spent the day skiing, enjoying the crisp air, and then returned home to hot chocolate, fragrant pastries, and a cozy dinner by the fireplace. Around 3 o'clock, my phone began vibrating insistently, and I glanced at the screen. Mom appeared on the screen. I met Jessica's eyes sitting next to me on the couch and said, "Looks like it's time to answer for all this." I pressed the call button and said, "Hi, Mom." Her voice was sharp as a knife. "Lucinda, where are you?" "Everyone's already here. We're waiting for you, and the food was supposed to be delivered an hour ago." I took a deep breath, trying to speak calmly. "I'm not coming for Christmas, Mom." An indignant sigh came over the line. "What do you mean you're not coming?" "Don't be stupid. Get ready and come immediately." I closed my eyes and replied firmly, "I heard your conversation with Aunt Linda last week. I know about your plan to lock me upstairs with 9 children while everyone else is having fun downstairs." There was a deathly silence on the other end, so thick it felt like the connection had been cut off. Then Mom's voice became sharp and defensive, as if she were trying to build a wall of words to hide her guilt. "I don't know what you heard, Lucinda, but you're exaggerating," she said. And at that moment, something inside me snapped. "I heard exactly what I heard, Mom," I replied, trying to keep my voice firm and calm. "You were laughing at how anyone could blame me for all the kids just because I didn't have any of my own. You never intended to invite me to Christmas as an equal. You needed a free babysitter." There was a pause on the other end of the line. Then Mom snapped, "If you don't come right now, we'll come to your apartment and bring all the kids there." I felt anger boiling inside me, and I couldn't help but let out a short, bitter laugh. "Good luck, Mom." "But I'm not home. I'm on vacation." At that moment, I heard voices in the background. Maria and the other relatives were clearly making a fuss, asking what was going on. Then Maria snatched the phone, and her voice hit me like a whip. "Lucinda, what's wrong with you?" "We were all finally planning to relax while you looked after the kids. You're being so selfish." I felt my stomach clench, and I blurted out, "I'm tired of being your unpaid babysitter, Maria. And I'm even more tired of all your plotting behind my back. And by the way, don't expect food delivery because I canceled it yesterday. Now celebrate without my money." Before anyone could answer, I pressed the red button to end the call, then immediately turned off my phone. Jessica sat next to me, looking at me with wide eyes. "Wow, that sounded powerful. Are you okay?" she asked, her voice more surprised than judgmental. I looked around the cozy little house, the twinkling lights, the warm glow of the fireplace, Jessica's parents happily bustling about in the kitchen, and the majestic snow-covered mountains beyond the window. "You know, Jess, I'm better than okay," I replied, tears of relief streaming down my cheeks. "I'm free. I turned off my phone for the rest of Christmas Eve and all of Christmas Day. For the first time in years, I spent the holidays the way they were meant to be, with joy, without pressure, without demands. No one made me chase the kids. No one pushed the responsibilities of setting the table or cleaning onto me. No one treated me like a servant. We were simply together, skiing, laughing, playing board games, watching movies, cooking together. Jessica's friends were so funny that I couldn't remember the last time I'd laughed so much. Her parents told stories of their own youth, of their first Christmases, and it sounded so warm that I caught myself thinking, this is what a real family celebration feels like, when you're accepted not for your sacrifices, not for your services, but simply because you exist. And on the morning of December 25th, I finally turned on my phone again. The screen filled with numbers. 43 missed calls, 15 from Mom, 12 from Dad, 8 from Maria, 5 from Rick, and a few more from other relatives. But the worst were the 27 unread messages. The first few were from Mom, demanding and cold. "Call me back immediately. Where are you? This is unacceptable." Then the tone grew harsher. "You're cruel and selfish. You ruined everyone's Christmas." The messages from Maria were even angrier, full of accusations. "I can't believe you did this to us. We had to run to the store at the last minute to gather the last of our food. We ate what we could scrape together in some lousy cafe. Even Rick wrote, 'Your sister is crying.' The kids are asking why there's no dinner, and one message from Dad finally put everything into perspective. We spent Christmas in a terrible mood. The kids drove us crazy, running around, screaming. We couldn't rest. This is all your fault." I reread every word and suddenly felt myself not burning with guilt, as I'd expected. On the contrary, I laughed, genuinely, with relief. I sat in this beautiful little house, surrounded by people who genuinely enjoyed my company, and read about how my family's carefully planned plan had turned into a complete disaster. Everything they'd tried to blame on me had become their own burden. They'd spent Christmas chasing 9 screaming children, without food, without order, without joy. Their holiday had been ruined, while mine, on the contrary, had turned out to be a true miracle. After Christmas, I stayed in the cozy little house with Jessica and her family for 3 more wonderful days, and every morning I woke to the soft light filtering through the curtains and the sound of laughter coming from the kitchen, where everyone was already bustling about preparing breakfast. We strolled along snowy paths, played snowballs, sat by the fireplace in the evenings, and drank wine, and it all seemed like something out of a fairy tale to me, because for the first time in many years, I felt less like a burden and less like a working hand, and more like a truly close-knit group where I was loved and appreciated simply for who I was. And so, on December 28th, with a slight sadness and a sense of gratitude in my soul, I finally drove back to my apartment, and on the way, it seemed as if my heart was overflowing with a peace I hadn't known in a long time. My phone vibrated intermittently, but I seemed to deliberately distance myself from the annoying sound, realizing it was all coming from my family, who were clearly trying to drag me back into the familiar cycle of reproaches and demands. I even chuckled to myself, thinking they were probably hoping for an apology, but I wasn't ready for that conversation yet and frankly, doubted I ever would be. The next morning, December 29th, I was already getting ready to enjoy the ordinary little things in life, making coffee in the kitchen, savoring the aroma of freshly ground beans, when I suddenly heard a sharp, aggressive knock on the door, completely unlike the polite knock of a neighbor or the postman. I cautiously approached the peephole and saw exactly what I expected. Mom, Dad, and Maria standing in the hallway, all 3 with faces twisted with anger. I took a deep breath, as if gathering my strength, and opened the door. "Don't even try to greet us," Mom practically shouted, and then roughly pushed me inside the apartment, as if it were her own territory. Dad and Maria followed, and Dad said, in that stern, heavy voice he always used when I broke curfew as a teenager, "We need to talk." "Okay, let's talk," I replied, closing the door behind them and trying to remain calm. Mom immediately turned to face me, her eyes blazing with hurt and fury. How could you do this to us, Lucinda? We had 25 people coming over, expecting a wonderful Christmas dinner, and they got nothing. Nothing at all. Dad added that the guests had been asking where the food was and that they had had to evade it by claiming there had been a mix-up with the catering company, making them look, as he put it, like complete idiots. Maria stepped closer to me, her face tense, her lips pursed, her voice full of venom. Rick's family thinks we're completely disorganized. His mother kept asking why we didn't have a backup plan. I stood and listened, and somewhere inside me, an ironic smile was forming, but I held it in for now. Mom spread her hands and, as if in despair, added, "And the kids?" All 9 of them were running around, screaming, making a mess. It was pure chaos, total chaos. Then I couldn't help but smile slightly. God, this is truly terrible. I can imagine how hard it is to look after such a crowd during a family celebration. Simply exhausting. "Don't you dare try to talk smart to us, young lady," Dad snapped. "You know perfectly well what you've done." I looked him straight in the eye and replied calmly but firmly, "Yes, I know perfectly well. I've decided not to be your unpaid babysitter and your personal holiday dinner planner." Mom's eyes filled with tears at that moment and her voice trembled. "You're our daughter. You should be helping the family." I sighed and said, "Helping? Yes. But let's be honest, you didn't want help. You wanted me to pay for everyone's meals and then spend the entire holiday cooped upstairs with 9 children while you had fun and relaxed downstairs. That's not family. That's exploitation." Maria's face turned red, and she almost screamed, "You're selfish. We work all week. We deserve to rest on holidays." "So I don't work?" I retorted. "I don't deserve to rest? You think that because I don't have children, I should take on yours?" Maria exploded. "You don't understand how hard this is." I took a deep breath and said, "You're right. I don't have children. And that's why Christmas isn't a time when I'm obligated to take care of strangers. Christmas should be a time when the whole family is together, not when one daughter becomes an unpaid babysitter for the rest." Mom couldn't hold back any longer. Tears were streaming down her cheeks. "Now, because of you, we'll never be able to show our faces to those relatives again. Everyone thinks we're terrible hosts. Your Aunt Linda said she'll never come for Christmas again. Uncle Mike's family left early, and Dad added that they complained about the chaos and said they couldn't enjoy themselves." Maria turned to me with an expression of rage and helplessness at the same time. Rick's brother asked me right there at the table if disasters like this always happen in our family, and I didn't even know what to say. I looked at the 3 of them standing in my living room, my parents and my sister, and all their accusatory breathing, all their irritated discontent, all their reproaches and tears suddenly lost all power over me. I suddenly realized that for the first time in my life, I felt above their words, above their manipulations, above their attempts to force me back into the old role of the comfortable, obedient, submissive daughter. "You know what? I don't care," I finally said, and my words sounded even and calm, without shouting, without trembling, simply like the truth I'd held inside for too long. "I don't care that your Christmas was ruined. I don't care that the guests left early, and I don't care that you had to blush in front of your relatives." Mom gasped, as if I'd slapped her, and whispered, "How can you say that?" I looked her straight in the eyes. "Because you've used me for years, and I've had enough." Every Saturday, Maria dumped her children on me without asking. Every holiday, you expected me to pay, cook, clean, and babysit. Not once did any of you ask me what I wanted, what this day meant to me, or whether I even wanted to spend it the way you planned. "We're your family," Dad said firmly, but I only smiled bitterly. Families don't conspire against each other to trick someone into becoming a free daycare. Families don't manipulate, exploit, or turn a daughter into a servant. Mom wiped her eyes, straightened up, and her voice became cold, distant, almost icy. "Well then, if that's what you think, that's it. We won't invite you to family celebrations anymore. You won't be part of our plans anymore. If that's how you want it, you can stay alone. Fine, I replied without the slightest hesitation. The three of them stared at me as if I'd grown a second head. You don't mean to say… Mom began, but Maria interrupted. She's serious. I can hear it in her voice. She's absolutely serious. And I nodded. Yes, I'm tired of being treated like a servant. I have my own life and I'm finally going to live it. Mom jerked her head up, her lips trembling. You'll regret this. When you're older and alone, you'll remember this conversation and realize you alienated your family. I looked at her calmly and quietly replied, The only thing I regret is not standing up for myself sooner. Dad pointed to the door. Come on, she's made her choice. They headed for the exit and Mom, already at the threshold, turned around once more. Don't come crying to us later when you realize what you've lost. I'm not coming, I replied, and I said it so earnestly that I even felt the power of those words in my heart. After the door closed behind them, I sat on the couch in complete silence for about 10 minutes, listening to the tension slowly drain from the room, the air become lighter, my chest looser. Then I picked up my phone, opened my contacts, and blocked all their numbers. Mom's, Dad's, Maria's, and a few others I knew would be calling in the coming days. And indeed, the next few days turned into a flurry of calls and messages from relatives. Aunt Linda tried to shame me, calling me ungrateful. Uncle Mike reproached me in his voice, saying I was breaking my mother's heart. Cousin Rachel whispered didactically that I should apologize for the sake of family peace. I listened to their first few sentences and hung up without hesitation. 2 months had passed since that Christmas. During this time, I haven't spoken to either my parents or Maria since the day they stood in my apartment. I know from other relatives who still try to call me that Mom and Dad now want to mend their relationship, but don't know how to approach me. And when these same relatives ask me to make concessions, to make peace, I always answer the same thing. I'll think about talking to them when they're ready to admit that for years they used me as an unpaid babysitter and never treated me as an equal family member. Until that admission comes, and until they're ready for an honest conversation, I have nothing to say. And you know what? I'm happier than I've been in years. Now my weekends are all my own. I can sleep as much as I want, hang out with friends, or simply enjoy the peace and quiet of home, with a book or a cup of coffee, without alarming calls or sudden responsibilities. I'm dating someone, and for the first time, I have time for a relationship built on joy and reciprocity, not a sense of obligation, and I don't feel a shred of guilt. I finally understand that family doesn't mean sacrificing yourself, erasing your own happiness and freedom for the sake of others. Family should be a place of warmth and support, not chains. And that's why I'm breathing deeply now.